In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to actually get all the dyes in Minecraft. There are 16 in total, and they can be used for a ton of different stuff, as is showcased right over here. Now I'm going to be showing you guys how to craft or obtain each one of these. And we're going to be starting off with a white dye. White dye looks like this, and can be crafted by using bone meal or the lily of the valley flower. Now this cannot actually be crafted using two different dyes, and being crafted by two different dyes is indicated by a crafting table. If you have to smelt something, that is indicated by a furnace as well. But anyways, these are the two ways of how to get this. You simply put this into a crafting table, or just your normal inventory crafting table. But as you can see, you can get white dye by using this for each one. Now, I will not be going over chest loot or villager trading, since that is too complex to actually get the dye, and I feel like this is much more simpler. But now moving on to the red dye, which looks like this. Red dye can be obtained from using a poppy, a red tulip, rose bush, and a beetroot. Now these four things all can be used to be crafted into red dye. Now with the rose bush and the two tall flowers, you can actually get two of the dye. As you can see, these are two tall and it gives you two of them. Another great feature is if you actually have bone meal combined with any of these two white flowers, you can actually infinitely get more. And you can get bone meal from killing skeletons. So by doing this, this is an infinite source of any of these dyes that have two white flowers. And I'll be going over them as we get to them. Now moving on to orange. Now orange is used by getting an orange tulip. Now most of these flowers you can just plant around your world. As you can see, there are even some right over there. But as you can see, the orange tulip can be crafted just like so. But this one also has a crafting recipe using other dyes. And that is by combining the red dye with the yellow dye. And as you can see, if we just grab them, we can actually combine them to make two orange dye. And that is pretty great. So you can actually use dyes if you have extras lying over, if you want to craft them into the orange dye, or any of the ones marked into the crafting table. But now onto the yellow dye. The yellow dye can be used in a dandelion or a sunflower, and that is the only way to obtain them. Once again, the sunflower can be infinitely given to you by using bone meal on the sunflower block. And sunflowers can also, when they are placed, are facing a certain direction in your world for the entire game. So as you can see, this will always face this direction. Either way I put it, it will only face this direction. As you can see, only facing one direction, which I feel like is pretty neat. But now moving on to lime dye. Lime dye can be obtained by smelting sea pickles. As you can see, if we grab some coal and put this into a furnace, it will actually smelt into lime dye. While that is smelting, you can see that it can be crafted by using green dye and a white dye. So if we do this in a crafting table, you can get lime dye, and you'll get two of them because you're using two different dyes. But as you can see, also in the furnace, it has been smelted into lime dye, which is extremely useful if you have a ton of sea pickles. Now moving on to green dye. Green dye once again can be smelted by using a cactus. So as you can see, if we put a cactus into a furnace, it will start smelting. And now this one does not have a crafting recipe like the lime dye. But as you can see, if we open this up, it will give us the green dye. And once again, that is extremely useful, especially in desert biomes. Now moving on to the light blue dye. Now the light blue dye can be found by using blue orchids. But blue orchids are pretty rare, and you can most commonly find them in swamps. But if you don't want to be searching for them all the time, you can actually craft them with blue and white dye. And obviously, I will show you an example right over here. As you can see, you can craft them like so. Now, moving on to cyan dye. Cyan dye can only be crafted and not obtained in any special way, like getting a flower or a block. And as you can see, it is crafted by using blue dye and green dye. So if we put that in a crafting table, as you can see, we get cyan dye. just like that. Now moving on to blue dye. Blue dye can be obtained by using a lapis or a cornflower. And this has no crafting recipe, but if you put the cornflower or lapis into here, you will get blue dye. Same goes with this, and now moving on to pink dye. Pink dye can be obtained by using a peony and a pink tulip. Now obviously you put these into a crafting table, and a peony actually is a 2 white flower, so once again you can bone meal it to get infinite amounts of these. But now, as you can see, you can also get it by using a white dye on a red dye. So if you put that into a crafting table just like so, you will get 2 pink dye, which is another extremely useful recipe. Next is magenta dye. Magenta dye can be crafted using lilacs or alliums. Now obviously you can put these into a crafting table and they will give you the magenta dye. And the lilacs can be duplicated by using bone meal. Magenta dye can also be crafted by using 2 different recipes. So you're going to want to get purple dye and pink dye will craft it, and also blue, red, and pink dye will also craft it. So as you can see, if we put purple dye and pink dye into it, you can get magenta dye, or you can do red and blue, which make purple, but if you add in pink as well, you can just straightly make magenta dye without having to craft it into purple, just if you don't want to go through that extra crafting step. Now moving on to purple dye. Purple dye can only be crafted. So to craft purple dye, you're going to need a blue and a red dye. And as you could have seen before, if we connect these, they will make purple dye. So this one cannot be found naturally inside the world. You're going to have to craft that. Now moving on to brown dye. Brown dye can be found using cocoa beans, which are found in jungle biomes. And as you can see, if we go on a jungle tree or just spawn in a jungle log, they will form just like this. So you're going to find one of these, but actually it's going to have to be fully grown. So if we give it some bone meal just like so, it's going to look something like this, and when you break it, it will drop these cocoa beans. But now moving on, it cannot be crafted into anything else. But to the light gray dye can be crafted by using a oxydaisy or a white tulip, and the azure bluet. Now, it can also be crafted by using a gray and a white dye. So if we grab the gray and white dye and go into the crafting table, you can craft it just by putting them in there. As you can see, we get 2 light gray dye. But now moving on to gray dye. Gray dye can actually only be crafted, so you cannot find this naturally inside your world. But as you can see, it can be crafted by using black dye and white dye. So if we put this inside a crafting table, you can craft the gray dye. And lastly is the black dye. Now you can get the black dye by getting an ink sac or a wither rose. An ink sac you can get by killing a squid, and the wither rose you can get by the wither killing a mob, and the mob will leave behind a placed wither rose. So you can obviously make a wither rose farm or something of the sort. But as you can see, you can do a lot of things with dyes. And if you actually don't want to get these dyes over and over again and you just want wool, you can actually dye sheep and then shear the sheep to get infinite amounts of wool for that dye. So as you can see, if I get a sheep and then I grab some shears, and then we also grab any amount of dye, I'm going to say blue dye because I'm going to use blue dye because sheep can't naturally spawn as blue. So we dye the sheep blue, and then if we right click on it with shears, it will actually drop the wool. Now there's a chance to drop a couple of wool. It does not always drop one, it could drop a lot more. As you can see, that time it dropped 3. But obviously it will regrow into blue wool once again, so you can have an infinite blue wool farm if you would like. And you can do this with any of these dyes, just so that you don't have to go running back and getting more dyes for wool specifically. But anyways, that's the end of this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed. If I helped you get any one of these dyes, make sure to leave a comment and a like, and possibly share it with a friend that is confused on how to get any of these dyes. Obviously, there will be timestamps so that you can go back and review any of these dies for your Minecraft world, since these are very useful items to get. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.